Welcome to Fitness Casual. We help you ditch diets and build habits no matter how busy you are, even in the summer. I'm Andrew Hayes, and with me is the not going to mention her weight, Kat Best.
Hi, everyone. Good call, Andrew.
That's right. I learned that a very long time ago, well before being a coach. Kat, one thing that is very public in terms of scales is 50 pounds is the weight limit for a checked bag. Are you one of those people who packs over a 50-pound checked bag or what?
I am not, because I typically do a carry-on bag, so I'm stuck to my little teeny tiny bag. I am very afraid of my luggage being lost on a trip. Like, nothing would derail. I can't come back. If I'm going somewhere and I don't have my stuff, like, I cannot recover from that. So I really hate when I have to check my bag, especially when they take my carry-on when I'm loading a plane. They're like, oh, we got to check it. I'm like, that was unfair. This was like highly unfair. You picked me, but not the person in front of me. I hate that. Davidson also always has like a soft duffel bag, so he never gets taken to the side, but mine always is. And yeah, I just hate that feeling. But I have checked a bag in the past, and I definitely watched it go on the little scale they put it on with just like sweat. I'm just like nervous of like, what am I going to have to take out? What am I going to do? But it was fine. How about you?
That's funny. Because we travel with kids, we have one big suitcase that can usually fit, if it's a short enough trip, all four of our stuff, which is like a point of pride for us to just shove everything in there. But kids' clothes is tiny. The problem is it's really pretty jam-packed, and so it's usually right on the edge, somewhere between like 48 and 55 pounds. And so it's like you really got to hold your breath. But I have noticed if you are nice to the people checking your bag, which you should be anyway, I'm not trying to just go like scheme everybody, but even just like last time I flew, she had these really cool like Jordan 4s on, and I was like, hey, I like your J's. And she was like, by the way, this is 54 pounds. Like, next time you're going to have to pay, and threw it in there for free. And so like, just be nice to people.
Yes.
You know, it's a good rule in life in general. But it's like the people who work at the airport, they don't want to charge you $50 more of just a smile and a thank you could, save everybody the trouble. So remember that. Be nice to people.
Yeah,
But
like
yes,
that, especially at the airport. Okay, so we're talking about the scale today. This is a loaded topic. Scale, as far as body weight scale, really loaded, but I think there are lots of pros and cons, and you're going to kind of tell as I talk. I have a biased opinion of what people should do, but that's just from years and years of working with people, a lot of weighing myself. I used to have a like severe reaction to the scale, and then I went through periods of not weighing myself for like a year, 2 years. Like, I really didn't own a scale for a long time. And now I have one, I weigh myself, and it's completely fine. So it's like, I'm going to take you a little bit on my journey as well. So for the pros, and this is also like when you weigh yourself, I'm also referring to first thing in the morning, after you use the bathroom, no clothes on is the best way to get your actual body weight. Pro number one is it's easily accessible. Anyone can have a scale. They're cheap. You do not need to get a smart scale. I actually advise that you don't, because it's just going to confuse you when your body fat goes 3% higher in one day, and you're like, how is that possible? It's not. So get a normal scale. They're very cheap, easily accessible. Anyone can have one in their house. Doesn't also need to be out on the floor. You can like take it in and out when you need to use it. It's just very straightforward. Anyone can have that. Anyone cannot have access to like an in-body scanner or a DEXA scan. All of these things cost more money. I think a DEXA is good, very hard to access, but a lot of even the smart scales at gyms, I don't think they're all that great. They are similar to how a smart scale can be wrong, but that's just one thing to keep in mind. Like, it's very easily accessible. I think another pro is that it tracks long-term trends. So your weight today doesn't really mean all that much, but compared to how much you weighed maybe last year, 2 years ago, it actually is really relevant to see, are you slowly gaining weight year after year? A lot of people end up overweight in their 30s, especially their 40s, from the creep. The creep of 2 to 3 pounds each year, which then turns into 5 because you're, over your lifestyle. If you're not taking care of yourself, it will compound, and then all of a sudden it's getting 10 pounds a year and even more. If you don't see those trends to be able to catch something that's happening, I think that is a missed opportunity to just get a better sense of where your health is at. But I also think on a weight loss perspective, if you're on a weight loss journey where you want to lose 20 or more pounds, weighing yourself lets you know if you're sticking to it. the biggest issue with weight loss is people will lose weight and then they gain it all back, or a large percent of it back. So if you're not weighing yourself, or you have an issue with getting on the scale, you also won't know if you're actually maintaining the work you put in. Or so I think just those trends is actually, really, really useful if you value preventative healthcare. You don't need to weigh yourself all the time, but if you get on every once in a while around the same time of day, I just think that's, helpful data to have. That's really easy. And they're going to weigh you at the doctor and things like that. So if you just kind of do that yourself to just be a little bit more aware, I do think that's really useful.
I will add one. I'll add one thing there, Kat. You said something to me really early on working together that was, I think, very profound, which is when someone is overweight and they're trying to lose weight, they're always concerned about, like, what actions do I need to take to lose weight? And it's a good question. But I think that the real question really to start is like, well, what happened that you became overweight? Like what's the last 10 years look like? A million reasons for that, a million ways to unravel that. Of course, everyone's different. And I think it's really helpful to dissect it. But the more you keep this top of mind, the less likely you are to go 10 years without seeing that. So this is just reinforcing what you're saying of like, yes, it's a delicate dance, which we're going to get into about how it can be triggering for certain people. But if this becomes a habit for you and it becomes top of mind, it's a lot quicker and easier to course correct when it's a weekly measurement, as opposed to something that you just ditched for 10 years because you became a parent and you're like, oh, one day I'll get back to it. And so making this one of the many tools in your toolkit will also keep you from just slipping very far and having you have to climb out of a really big hole.
Exactly. And that it perfectly captures my next pro, which is it increases awareness. It brings attention to a lot of other things. I would say especially how choices like ultra processed food, drinking alcohol, or not drinking any water, like how these things actually impact your weight fluctuations. I think an individual understanding their weight fluctuation is the most powerful thing when you have issues or fear of the scale. If you know day to day you could be anywhere from like a 1 to 2 pound range, and that's your normal, now you're not going to freak out when the scale goes up. Let's say you worked out really hard and the scale goes up the next day, people will be like, oh my God, my workout is like working against me, blah, blah, blah. No, you're just retaining water because you're recovering a little bit. Or maybe you ate dinner a little bit later than you normally do, or maybe you didn't poop yet today. Like those are really basic reasons the scale goes up that no one should turn into like a life-altering moment, but people do. So I think the more you weigh yourself, the more awareness you have to actually understand what your body's going through. A good example is after a trip. If you're traveling and you come back and the scale's 5 pounds heavier, I can guarantee you did not gain 5 pounds. You're inflamed. You're dehydrated, maybe time zone. Like your body's just kind of a mess when you do a big trip. But if at the end of that week, that 5 pounds is now off and you're back to what you were before, not a big deal. So next time you travel, you're going to expect that to happen. You're like, actually, I know that this happens after I travel. It's going to go back down. Not a big deal. I know what to do. What an empowering place to be, and not being in a spiral every time you get on the scale. So I do think awareness also, it tells you if you have a food sensitivity sometimes, if you have a big spike on the scale, or just inflammation in general, or stress on the body. If you're doing something to lose weight and your weight just keeps going up and up and up, you're probably just putting too much stress on your body. So that's good feedback and awareness. But a lot of people will internalize that to mean something more about themselves, or get really down, or think nothing works. But actually you can just use that as information to, change something that you're doing. I think the scale is actually motivating for many people. The reason I have people weigh themselves is because if we see the scales going down and you have a weight loss goal, then you are literally achieving what you are trying to do. That's motivating and makes people go, okay, I'm on the right track. I want to keep doing this. I feel good. If I never used a scale and someone needed to lose 35 pounds, how do we even know where anything is at? Like, that's my biggest thing is like, if you really want to lose weight, it's just a very direct way of understanding. It's not the only tool, but it is actually motivates people. How many times do we talk to people when they hit their, a 15-pound mark? And they're really excited by that. That's really motivating, and that makes them want to get to 20, to 25. If we were never going by the scale, then we would have no idea, or just be like, keep going, no clue where you're at, no clue when to stop. But, the only thing you could pay attention to are like your clothes fitting in photos, which are helpful. But for a lot of people who need to lose a good amount of weight, like the scale is just a motivating factor because it confirms that you are doing the right things. Now, of course, if that's not happening, it can mean a bunch of other things, but I think for the most part, it's a positive thing and motivates people when they see that happening. And I think it's just a reinforcement that you're doing the right things, and people need that when they're doing hard things. Like, people are making big sacrifices to lose weight. They're changing up their whole lifestyle. They need that weekly hit of like, it's going well. And I think that can be really valuable to keep people on track.
That's right. Measurable progress applies to everything you do in life, and especially when you're trying to disrupt years and years of food patterns and behaviors. Really good to have that positive reinforcement. But of course, it can go both ways.
Yeah, and it also, I think it's just a data point, but it's really useful to allow yourself to make adjustments when needed. So if you are paying attention to your calories and your activity levels, like you're working out, the way the scale is going actually tells you if you're achieving the thing you want. So if your goal is to build muscle, which means no scale drop, right? And you're working out more, you're hitting the gym 5 times a week, just trying to build muscle, doing hypertrophy training, and the scale starts going down, now we know you are either not eating enough or you're working out too much and you're losing weight, which means you're so not building muscle. So it's like the scale is telling people directly if they're doing the right thing there. So that's a way to just be like, okay, you need to eat more food. Or if someone diets, loses 25 pounds, now we do what's called a reverse diet. I don't want people to just be like, all right, caloric deficit's over, go back to eating whatever, and then they gain weight back really quickly. Like, we need to control how quickly the rate of regain is, and that's really easy to do with the scale. So it's like that allows, for me, very objective data to know if we're doing the right thing or not. And as I teach people how to understand the scale over the course of our program, I also help people understand how to interpret what they see. Like, that's actually a big part of what we do, is making people understand what they're seeing. And I see people really transform with how they feel about the scale in the beginning of the program to the end. It's actually like really beautiful to see, because people are just kinder and they kind of like it from like a data standpoint of like, oh, actually, you know, after I ate out that restaurant, I didn't feel good and the scale went up like 4 pounds. Well, that's probably a sign of like, maybe you don't want to do that again next time, you know, whatever. But it's just, it helps people, you know how to course correct if needed.
Yep.
So cons, there are a lot of cons as well. One is that the scale does not differentiate between fat and muscle. So a scale will not show you if you've lost fat but gained muscle, so your weight could technically stay the same or go up while you're visibly looking leaner. That's confusing, and that's why I actually say there's a difference between weight loss and fat loss. But if someone is 30 pounds overweight and they want to build muscle, the actual thing is they want to lose fat and then build muscle. So it's like, we need to understand that. But if you're someone who, I would say, maybe you want to tone up, but you don't have much body fat, or it's like 5-8 pounds you want to lose, the scale might be not very helpful for you, because if you're trying to build muscle a little bit, it might just stay the same while you actually lose fat. So that's a use case where photos and like other things like how your clothes fit are actually really helpful. But this is, to me, the biggest thing that discourages women from doing what they should be doing to actually get leaner and feel really amazing, is they can't handle that the scale might go up a little bit in order for them to, you know, build a little bit muscle. But the scale can go up while you look leaner. Like, it definitely can, and a lot of women just don't trust that process, so they don't allow that to happen, and they never see that result. And, you know, I'm in that phase right now. I've watched the scale go up and up and up over the years for me. Sure, it has uncomfortable moments, but then I check in with, like, how I feel and all these other things, my performance. Everything is good there, so I just remind myself that in moments where I'm feeling down about it. Another thing is, daily fluctuations can be really misleading. So people go into panic mode when they see something went up a little bit, and then it leads to a spiral in the head. But really, they're just not considering hormonal changes, especially like the menstrual cycle, your bowel movements, like if you had a really hard workout. So you're just not putting everything into the perspective, because no one's told you that. When I send people, I have a sheet that's like how the scale fluctuates and what's going on. People are mind blown. They're like, oh my God, this is so helpful. That's because no one in your life has taken the time to explain to you all these things that impact your weight. So once you just have that small piece of awareness, and on my sheet, I have like at least 14 things that could contribute to it. It also allows people to go through a checklist of like, oh yeah, I'm on my period. Duh, of course your weight went up. That's exactly what's supposed to be happening. But women just bypass that and then they go right into panic mode and feel down, but they're not adding context clues. So I just think those fluctuations, if you're not really sharp and aware, can really lead to frustration. And I would say that can be a big one, because it just makes people feel really defeated over time, and also creates a lot of anxiety, which is really sad and unfortunate.
Yep. We will make sure to include that sheet in our Ultalife community, which we'll shout out at the end, but you can also find the link in the show notes.
Definitely. Next con would be that the scale can become obsessive. You know, any data point, especially in the world of wearables and trackers and like all of these things, we can be really obsessive about, scale weight. I've met women who have weighed themselves every single morning their entire life, and they don't have a good relationship to it. I've met people who weigh themselves every single day and they feel very neutral. There's that kind of like, yeah, it's something I do, but it doesn't really dictate my day. People have very different relationships. It's so dependent on your childhood. You know, did you have an eating disorder when you were younger? Do you have parents who were like constantly talking about their weight? It doesn't even have to be yours, but if they're weighing themselves every day and like letting you know, like that definitely can impact your interpretation of what weighing yourself means. You know, people can have body image issues, that it can just really turn into an obsessive trigger for a lot of negativity. But my counterpoint to that is you just need to understand and like become knowledgeable and learn a little bit more, because that's the only way out of that personal hell, in my opinion. I really don't think too much can help you there other than just trying to learn facts and really try to apply rational thinking in those moments where you start to spiral. But I do think like the obsessiveness of it is definitely a con for many people.
And this is something that I see work really well in our program, in that weight or fat loss in general is kind of like a taboo subject that people are afraid to discuss. And, you know, I'm making light of a very serious topic when I talked about your weight at the beginning, but it is important to normalize this in some capacity. Like, I think it's okay. We shouldn't be commenting on other people's bodies or commenting on other people's weights, of course, but it's also totally fine that you are on a journey. And I think sometimes it's important to just own that. And, you know, money is another one where it's like people are always so taboo to talk about money, but sometimes just getting it out there makes it a lot easier. And so I've had this conversation with many people early on in like our program. They're like, oh, you know, I don't really care about my weight. And I'm like, well, let's be honest. Like, do you? It's okay that you do, and we will all work on that together. But let's not like pretend that it's not important to you, and it's okay that it is. Let's make it not super emotional and not ignore it completely. Let's find that balance of like, we're all on the same page about the goal here. And so sometimes just kind of that self-acceptance and being okay with it is an important step as well.
Yeah, if someone has a really big issue with the scale, I kind of dive into like, why? Where did this come from? Where did this first start? Because it's not actually about the scale at all. It's about what you're telling yourself when you see a number. And at the end of the day, a number should not dictate like how you feel. That's right. But I think instead of avoiding the scale entirely or being like, I don't believe in weighing yourself. Like, I hear that a lot. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you would weigh your food on a food scale. Like, you don't know what it weighs if you don't do that. Same with your body. Like, it's just, you need to just work on the reaction or the underlying trauma that has led you to this place to think that it is so bad to pop on a scale. And that leads to my last con, which is the scale does not give you the full picture of health. Not by any means. You can be healthier, fitter, leaner without the number on the scale changing significantly, or, you know, even going up, like I said. That's why other tools are really important. Or you could be actually the inverse. You could be a healthy weight and be unhealthy severely. Actually, sometimes like people who are actually a little bit skinny or under muscled have some of the poorest health of all. And they are a healthy weight for their height, so, you know, good BMI, so they're like, cool, you're healthy, but that doesn't mean anything. So that's why like the scale can just be misleading. I'm sure, and I know there are people who are probably slightly overweight maybe, but they're at their healthiest with biomarkers and how they feel and energy at that weight. That's really normal. And also the scale, it really doesn't know the amount of muscle on your body. So we could look at, you posted something, what was it, Donald Trump at like 6'3", 225 or something.
DK Metcalf, who's an NFL receiver, who's like absolutely, you know, muscle packed, 6'3", same height, same weight as Donald Trump.
Completely different looking. And that's why like people who actually have a lot of muscle sometimes can be BMI obese, but they have barely any body fat because they have a lot of muscle. So that's like a nuanced thing. But I think that is one con because you're just not fully getting a good picture there. But my opinion is that getting on the scale should feel neutral. It should feel like, oh, went up, went down. You should not have a big celebration if it goes down, and you should not be kicking yourself and being sad if it goes up. It should feel very neutral. That's something to try and achieve. And I think regardless of what the scale says, it should not dictate what you do that day. You don't need to cut your calories more. You don't need to go do extra cardio because you gained a pound overnight. Those are the things that you should not allow to happen, and you should be able to catch yourself when that stuff is happening. And I think that leads to someone having the healthiest relationship with body and the scale, because ultimately like that matters most. But after listening to this, think about how you really feel on the scale, and I think that's a good thing to also reach out to me or us to talk about, because there's definitely things under the surface there, and that's what I want people to focus more on than feeling really stressed out getting on the scale, or whatever it brings up for you. Just keep it in mind that we want the goal to be very neutral.
Yep. There are very few times in life where catastrophizing will get you anywhere. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but as a parent, it's something I constantly catch myself on too. If something happens with my kids behaviorally or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you start to spiral. It's really just one data point. You can very quickly course correct, ask for help, or maybe just put it aside and do better the next day, however you want to handle it. And you have lots of people in your corner, and that's a great example of how the scale should not send you into a spiral when there's so many easy wins and other ways you can handle it.
Yep, 100%.
We catch everything, Kat?
I think so, most of it.
All right. Well, if you join our Ultalife community, we'll make sure to share that scale sheet because, again, it's something that we all should have been taught in school. Instead, we were learning the Pythagorean theorem or whatever irrelevant information that none of us use today. I'm partly kidding. If you're a math teacher, love you very much, but it is true. I would have liked to learn nutrition and fitness stuff 30 years ago. You can get all of the information and more in our Ultalife community on WhatsApp. You can find the link in the show notes. You can follow Kat on Instagram at KatBestWellness. You can follow me on Instagram at AndrewHayesLife. Enjoy your summer, everybody, or if you're listening to this not in the summer, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you for the next one.
Bye, guys.